so I know, we did not get, I don't recall seeing it. If we did, I've misplaced it. I saw it and lost it. We didn't get anything by mail this time, right? Or we did?
No, it was a small agenda.
No.
We didn't email.
Gotcha.
All right. Out in the packet.
So when I look to my left, I'm going to be looking at our agenda kind of online. So George, you got to see this real quick before we go online. See this?
Okay.
I got the small laptop down here, and I got the big screen here, and I got the little screen here. So I'm
Boy, you're prepared.
I don't know about that. I'm sure we're all doing this. So I've seen somebody using 5 computer screens at one time, and I go, that's 4 more than I really need.
Mr. Marino isn't here yet.
What's that time yet?
It looks like he's connecting.
Oh, is he?
He's working on it.
Yeah.
We got a couple more minutes, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Hausman, how are you, sir?
Good. How are you?
Good, good. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Tom, you look suspiciously like you've gotten a haircut.
No, not at all.
Well, I mean, I'm used to seeing the mullet. You must have gotten that cut off.
I think it's growing.
Yeah.
It's just a matter that I have a receding hairline that makes it look like I got a haircut.
He's just bummed because he can't play in the what's that golf outing, hockey outing called, the Happy Gilmore or something?
Happy Gilmore. They
Happy
rescheduled
Gilmore.
it to September.
Did they?
Yeah.
Yeah. No one invites me because I can't play hockey very well. I'm even those two have seen me on the ice, so they go, "Oh my gosh, it can't be any worse." So yeah, it is true. I am worse on the golf course than I am in the hockey rink. So
Before you hit that.
7 o'clock.
Okay.
Gentlemen, ladies, we gotta go. Let's call the evening meeting Isabella County Board of Commissioners to order. Stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America,
States of America.
to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
under God, indivisible,
liberty and justice for all.
Try to make that. Yeah, I can't do it because
It's not
it's not.
perfect.
Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Green,
Here.
Commissioner Engler,
here,
Commissioner Jelzinski,
here,
Commissioner
Joe.
Horton,
here,
Commissioner Marino,
Here.
Commissioner Swaney,
here.
Commissioner Hope.
Here.
All present, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Engler and Jim. Item 3 is the approval of the agenda. This afternoon, this evening, we have one presentation and special reports, brings us down to consent agenda. Any corrections to the consent agenda? Moving on to committee reports, finance and administration.
Finance and Administration Committee is all set, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Criminal Justice and County Affairs Committee.
Criminal Justice and County Affairs Committee is all set, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. How about the Human Resource and Public Works Committee?
Human Resources and Public Works Committee is all set, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Hope, is there any intergovernmental affairs this evening to be added?
Not tonight, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Margaret, any administrative controller issues?
No, sir.
Thank you. We have no unfinished business under new business. We have 2 items. A motion to approve the agenda as presented is in order.
So moved, Marino.
Support Jelzinski.
Been moved and supported to approve the agenda as presented. All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
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 We have an agenda. Moving on to item 4 is general public comment. Michelle, is there anybody that's muted?
No, Mr. Chairman, we have nobody for general public comment.
Thank you. I like that Nicole for us.
She's here. She's watching. That's Michelle.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Moving on then to the next item, which is the presentations and special reports. Margaret?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me okay from here?
Can
Yes.
everybody hear
Yes.
Margaret?
Yes.
We have feedback if both of our microphones are on, so I'll just talk loudly. So I attended the virtual FEMA briefing process for submitting COVID-19 related expenses for possible reimbursement. I know Mark Griffiths attended it. I know Nicole attended it. Chris, my staff attended it. We are doing the best we can to make that type of request. We have submitted some bills already to. I will say that, you know, I am not, I'm not convinced, nor am I doubting that we will receive some funds. I don't think we're going to receive reimbursements for everything COVID related because everything's not going to be eligible. Everybody across the country is in the same boat, so there's a limited amount of money, but we're certainly going to do our fair share to have Isabella County well represented and receive everything that we can back from what we've spent. So that was a great opportunity for us to do that. I'm having 3 times Zoom meetings with the city manager and the Union Township manager, so us can stay connected and informed what we're doing with our entities. So that's a very good use of our time. So like usually half hour or 40 minutes, and it's certainly a good time to talk to our colleagues and stay connected. Weekly leadership team meetings on Zoom to stay connected and informed with my department heads and my department staff. Also having weekly staff meetings on Zoom with my accounting or my administrator controller's office staff. I've had some calls with MAC and other administrators regarding MIDC, kind of seems to be a constant. I think that we came to a great conclusion of where we wanted to be with the contract. We came to an agreement with Lara and with MIDC, so we're very encouraged with that. Now we're working on the definition of partial indigency. It appears that that definition is going to be somehow like dribbled off to the MIDC. So the commission will be coming up with some recommendations or decisions making, and we want to be part, we being the administrator controllers and the counties, want to be part of making sure we have a lot of input into that. So we're going to be working on that. Everything that I'm attending is virtually, obviously. Attending Saginaw, Midland Bay, Isabella County, Gratiot County, Michigan Works Board of Directors. I would honestly say that except for those things, all of my attention pretty much is spent on COVID-19 related situations, trying to stay updated and informed of executive orders, CDC requirements, and other things as we move, as how they relate to county government, how they relate to Isabella County. We want to make sure that we are doing things right and that we are doing things cautiously. And you'll see that when we talk about the plan later. The preparedness and response plan discussions have been ongoing, multiple Zoom meetings. This plan is required by the governor's executive orders. They're required also by the CDC and other regulatory organizations. We received some insight. The CDC policy I looked at was like 35 pages long of kind of instructions. Administrator controllers, I may have told you this last time, we sent that to MMRMA and asked them to put together some drafts for us. They did. So what we ended up doing here is we decided, and we'll talk about this later, but we decided to look at that, look at a couple other best practices, look at a couple of county policies of administrator controllers that I have a lot of respect for. And so as we get in talking about that later, I want you to know that I have had Zoom meetings with the department heads last week to go through the plan with them. Great buy-in. I've also asked all the department heads to supply, we're having telephone calls or Zoom meetings with all of my department heads, looking at having us have discussions about how reentry will look in their department, because I'm not in everybody's department. And I want to make sure that I'm supporting all of our departments the best way I can to move forward here when we're ready to move forward. So there's some intricacies that every department has. Policy is policy, plan is plan, but how they're implemented might be a little different from department to department. So I also met today with the elected officials and went through the plan with them. Again, a great meeting. As far as COVID numbers, I don't know how many of you are getting the same information that I get from the governor's office every day, but Isabella County is holding our own at 62 cases. I think that's the number we've had for a couple of weeks now. That's encouraging news. Across the state, we are at 51,915 cases. So, we're all hoping that we can continue to flatten the curve. board down on the agenda and we talk about the COVID discussion with the board and the plan, we can talk about that some more. But that's what I've been doing for the last 2 weeks.
Any questions for Margaret? Margaret, thank you very much. As usual,
you.
good business.
Thank you very much.
Moving on, we have no appointments of boards and commissions. Consent agenda. Commissioner Swaney, would you like to read that, please?
Yes, Chair Green. Consent agenda reads, motion, move to approve and place on file the May 5th, 2020 regular meeting minutes.
Support, Joe Lozinski.
It's been moved and supported to approve the consent agenda as read. Madam Clerk, a roll call, please.
Commissioner Hope,
Yes.
Commissioner Engler,
Yes.
Commissioner Jazinski,
Yes.
Commissioner Horton,
Yes.
Commissioner Marino,
Yes.
Commissioner Swaney,
Yes.
Commissioner Green.
Yes.
Number of votes cast is 7. The ayes received 7, nays received 0. Motion passed, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Moving on to committee reports, finance and administration. Gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First up on our list is the April 30th, 2020 routine personnel. Motion reads, move to accept and place on file the April 30th, 2020 routine personnel items as presented.
Support.
It's been moved and supported to approve the April 30th, 2020 routine personnel items.
Thanks,
Any
sir.
discussion? There's
No,
little.
we got to, real quick, on the register of deeds, we only have one register of deeds. We have a step increase, and that is it for April 30th, 2020 dated.
Any additional discussion? Hearing no further discussion, Madam Clerk, a roll call, please.
Commissioner Engler,
Yes.
Commissioner Jazinski,
Yes.
Commissioner Horton,
Yes.
Commissioner Marino,
Yes.
Commissioner Swaney,
Yes.
Commissioner Hope,
Yes.
and Commissioner Green.
Yes.
Number of votes cast is 7, of which the ayes received 7, nays received 0. Motion passed, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 2 is May 1st, 2020 invoice list, the May 8th, 2020 invoice list, and the May 14th, 2020 adjustment list. The motion reads, move to ratify and place on file May 1st, 2020 invoice list in the amount of $110,511.24. The May 8th, 2020 invoice list in the amount of $510,722.28, and the adjustment list dated May 14th, 2020.
Support.
Been moved and supported to approve the May 1st, 2020 invoice list, the May 8th, 2020 invoice list, and the May 14th, 2020 adjustment list. Discussion.
Okay, so May 1st list, very small list. I think with the COVID going on, a lot of things are on hold, not much happening right now, but we have our HATS biweekly payment, monthly credit card charges, some public defender appointments, and Gratiot Isabella Intermediate School District. Must be a tax reimbursement there, I'm guessing. Then on the May 8th list, we've got a couple payments to Integrated Architecture for architectural services for the jail from February and March, masks for building and grounds, some work from Spicer and Star Excavating on drains, second quarter remonumentation services, Paul Lapham, WellPath, which is our monthly medical services contract for the sheriff. And then there are some tax disbursements or tax adjustments, I guess, for Shepherd Schools, SCA Pleasant Corp, Colliers International, and then the April District Probate Court transmittals for the state of Michigan. And then on the adjustment list, also very small, the Gordon Food Service, early payment discounts that we always see. And then was one invoice voided due to the billing amount being incorrect. And that's about it. I don't know if any of the commissioners have any questions on any of those.
Is there any other?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner
Chairman.
Hart.
real quick, I just noticed this today, and this is, I'm sorry it was late in the day when I did notice this. On the adjustment list, this is the first time it's probably been there and I've never noticed it, and I think this might clear up some stuff. With the Gordon Foods adjustment, it does not list the department that adjustment is being made to, and I think that was always one of the confusing issues because we're saying we're adding the invoice back into the original invoices. So I'm assuming in conversations I had with the county administrator, that is probably for the jail, the Gordon Foods. It does not appear on their May 1st and May. There's one Gordon Foods statement on May 8th, but there's nothing on May 1st. So I'm assuming when we say we're adding those are going into each different account, but it does not list the accounts. But since Commission on Aging is not probably acquiring any Gordon Food Services, I'm assuming that's probably going to the jail. So probably in the future on the adjustment list, if we could have added what department that would go under. Again, we all know, it's going to go to two places that serve food. So it just would probably be just as a clarification only.
We can do that, Commissioner Horton. Now that I look at this again, I see that $1,200 says Midland County Juvenile Care.
Right.
So I'm kind of thinking that it must have been a payment from the court system, but I will track that down and get back with the commissioners.
Yeah. Again, it's just paid, it's just not even a clerical error, not even a clerical thing. Just because we all, we've done, like I've mentioned numerous times before, we've gone to the point where we're sitting there trying to figure out numbers to what department to actually being able to make it even something I can understand, which is scary. But
a good point. We'll fix that for the next round.
Perfect. Thank you.
Good point.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Any other discussion on the agenda?
Yes, Chair Green.
Yes.
On the May 1st invoice list, I just would like to get clarification, or at least more clarification in the future. I know we're listing things as COVID-19 expenditures. However, I mean, they're big items. We've got $6,000 in the Chase Bank one, and then DBI has another admin of almost 2,000 here. And so
I can tell you, Commissioner, what the DBI ones are for.
Yeah.
And if you ever have this question, if you notice before a meeting and you can email me or text me or whatever, I can have those invoices pulled so we can have that. I will tell you the DBI.
Yeah.
A couple of months, gosh, I lost track of time, but those are personal protection things like masks, hand sanitizers, those types of things. There's been a long period of time, and some alcohol wipes, large wipes, kind of like Clorox wipes, but they actually come now in, because there are no Clorox wipes in the world. They're coming now looking like baby wipes, kind of those types of containers. We are able now to access, and I think either last week or the week before, took a big delivery from the Michigan State Emergency Management Center of PPE. Prior to that, we did not know what we were getting or when we were getting it. So if you add that together with our DBI orders and a couple of other orders here or there, that's all personal protection equipment.
Right. So I had talked to Steve when I saw this list about this, and he was going to pull the receipts for the Chase Bank for me. But he never got back to me, and I forgot to get back to him before today's meeting. But it would be interesting to know what was $4,000. If we're approving these items.
So Steve, when you say you spoke to Steve, who's Steve?
I'm sorry, Krinovich.
Okay, Steve Krinovich wouldn't kind of be who you'd want to talk to. You'd want to talk.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. I'm Chris Whitmer.
Okay, accounts.
I responded to the email sent with the May 1st invoice.
Okay.
Sorry.
So if you're looking for that type of stuff, if you would email me, I'm happy to get that information.
Right.
I thought that Chris had gotten that from you from what we had, and I did discuss that.
Okay.
If you want some of the backup information, or you want to see a receipt or an invoice, I'm happy to provide those. Just let me know and we'll pull them.
Cool.
You get them.
Chairman Green, can I,
Yes, Horton.
real quick, as far as the COVID-19 expenditures, maybe we should, since we're seeing some of these now, maybe Margaret, if you could put together maybe a list of exactly what COVID-19 expenditures, considering what would be COVID-19 expenditures as an example. Just looking at like Commissioner Slaney had mentioned, the second one, COVID-19 expenditures for 144.73. Just what that would be. I mean, I don't know if you want to do every one, that's drilling down pretty deep, but just to give us an idea as far as, I don't want to go into this till later, but in the business world, COVID-19 expenditures were, obviously with PPP money, we were able to get some like 75% salary and 25% other stuff, but we didn't get anything as far as COVID-19 expenditures go, like buying excess PPE for our employees, buy hand sanitizer, things like that, extra delivery costs and everything. So just as what we would consider from a county standpoint, what a COVID-19 expenditure was. Maybe we don't even get down into the drill down into the exact specifics, but some examples of what a COVID-19 expenditure would be from a county standpoint.
So the COVID-19 designation, for your interest and knowledge, is that when we are purchasing things that we think might be eligible for reimbursement from FEMA, we have gone in and we have adjusted, we have added to our account numbers, for lack of a better thing, so that there's now in each department, there's an office supply number for COVID related expenditures. There's a whatever. So people are coding their bills that way.
Mm-hmm.
Bills come into us now, we're looking at the bills and going, oh, that might be a COVID expenditure. That's how it's coming to us coded, so that we can report that to FEMA. And we can provide them with all the backup documentation. So that's kind of goes back to my report earlier about going through the seminars, the webinars, and the briefings, and trying to put us in the best position possible for what is going to be approved and not approved. There's still some confusion. I don't want to use the word confusion. There's still some gray areas of what the federal government through FEMA might approve or not. But this is a way for us to keep track up front of everything that is a COVID expense, be something that we can be reimbursed for. So as an example, when we had the flood 3 years ago, and eligible to get up to $100,000 back from the state for expenses, we didn't have BSNA. We didn't have quite the sophistication that we have now in dealing with this up front. So we had to go back and go through expenses and invoices and whatever and try to figure out what that was. And we ended up getting all of $100,000 back. So we did a good job in that. But this is a way for us to upfront code those expenses, pull the information and send it to FEMA.
Yeah, I think we're saying the same thing. It just says on our commissioners, and I'm just speaking for myself, but the COVID-19 expenditure without any of the headings, just to get an idea kind of, maybe we don't have to look at what a -90-cent thing is. What is a $4,033 COVID-19 expenditure? What exactly is that?
I'm happy to pull that information and provide it to you.
No, yeah, 100%. And I think that's what, I don't want to put words in Commissioner Swaney's mouth, but I think that's kind of what he's getting at. It's just, what are $14.95 COVID-19 expenditure? What exactly is that? Just to enlighten us in case we ever get asked that question, or, as we can use it maybe in our businesses, if it ever comes to the fact that, what is the county considering to be a COVID-19 expenditure? Because we don't see that.
Happy to do that.
We don't see that in the expense list. We just see a heading.
Yep, I'm happy to do that. Not a problem.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret.
Sorry.
Any other discussion?
To jump in on you there, so I apologize for that. So.
Any other discussion? Madam Clerk, a roll call, please.
Commissioner Jazinski,
Yes.
Commissioner Horton,
Yes.
Commissioner Marino,
Yes.
Commissioner Swaney,
Yes.
Commissioner Hope,
Yes.
Commissioner Engler,
Yes.
and Commissioner Green.
Yes.
Number of votes cast is 7, ayes received 7, nays received 0. Motion passed, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Chairman, that completes the work of the Finance and Administration Committee.
Good job. We will move on now to item B, the Criminal Justice and County Affairs Committee. Gentlemen?
We have one item, and it is the fiscal year 2021 Michigan Indigent Defense Commission Compliance Plan. Motion reads, move to authorize the submittal of the fiscal year 2021 Michigan Indigent Defense Commission Compliance Plan.
Support Engler.
It's been moved and supported to approve the fiscal year 2021 Michigan Indigent Defense Commission Compliance Plan. Discussion.
It looks like we're maintaining the status quo, and I'm going to ask Mark or Tom to comment further on the plan. The one thing I did notice is it looks like we may be reducing the number of attorneys being hired by one for this next current budget.
So what we're planning to do, Commissioner, is to transition to probably have transition that amount of money into the managed assigned contract, just because that's kind of seems to be what our reality is now that we're into the, I think, our second year. So, you know, we have better knowledge now, and Tom will address this certainly, but that's something that we've talked about. We don't want to, we don't want to balloon a grant. You know, we want to ask for the money that we need to provide the services that we need to provide them in the way that we need to provide them. So I'm agreeing with you. I'd like to turn it over to Tom. This is Tom's first appearance, I think, doing a staff report. And other times this would have come underneath his name from his signature. So it's just the way to get this out. But Tom certainly wrote this, and I'd like to have him present if that's okay with you, Commissioner Jablonski.
That's fine.
Thank you, commissioners. First, I want to apologize. I don't know if you guys are aware what's going on in Midland right now, but all the dams are breaking. Half of Midland is being evacuated. So bear with me.
Are you in a safe spot, Tom? Are you okay?
I am. Our house is east of Eastman, but we have opened our house to any evacuees that live in that area. So
it's nice.
Yes, we're living right now. So yes, the biggest change going forward with the cost analysis and the compliance plan is the elimination of one staff attorney from the public defender's office. Originally in our fiscal year 20 plan and prior to that, there were 3 assistant public defender positions. I think we've seen that you know, our whole plan from the beginning was that the public defender's office would handle 75% of all the criminal defense cases, and that there's another one, and that 25% would be handled by that managed assigned counsel contract.
So I think, commissioners, if you're hearing that, there's going to be obviously an emergency alert coming over. I don't know if it's going to come over your computer. It just is coming over. I don't think it's taken over the commission chairman's computer, but that was the beep, beep, beep of his, and maybe you too, Tom, at your house. Is that what that
Yes,
is?
that was both of my phones.
Okay.
Okay.
And Margaret, that's why I tried to call you about 15 minutes before the meeting, so don't worry about that.
Well, I was talking to one of the commissioners 15 minutes before.
Okay.
You called me.
So I think that what we've seen is in order to comply with the 4 standards as designated by the MIDC and approved through Laura, that realistically we only need 6 total attorneys in the office in order to not only handle 75% of those cases, but also to still appear for all the arraignments within the county. You know, we've been continuously appearing at all arraignments since September of last year, and we've been able to do that frankly, with only 3 people in the office. It was a bit of a stretch, but we were still complying with that standard. And I think the original plan was for 7 attorneys, basically designating one of those lower level assistant positions to only handle arraignments. But I think that we're more than capable of complying with the standards at that reduced rate of only 6 attorneys, thereby, you know, kind of shifting some of that salary money over into the contract services. I think what we've noticed throughout fiscal year 20 is that we are complying with one of the standards that hasn't been approved yet, and that's the hourly rate for contract attorneys. Because the office is not fully staffed at the moment, there's more of a burden on the contractual services and contracts attorneys at this point. And so they're bearing more of the burden in regards to those cases. So, once the office does get fully staffed, I envision that contractual number will actually shrink back down once we're able to hire the, I guess it's 3 more attorneys. One attorney, one senior assistant was able to start kind of virtually over the past week, so that he's able to learn at the same speed as the rest of us with how to do virtual court hearings. So that's been a big benefit, and he's going to be able to get appointed to some cases and start out learning this whole new process of how to practice law with the rest of us. Because of that, obviously, it shifts around the fringe benefit numbers as well as the local share. And so ultimately, we're able to cut the total grant number by, I consider a significant margin. I think the document in front of you shows a estimated savings of about $184,000. That number is still not a solid number, but it's right in the ballpark of what we're going to be able to trim off of the budget going forward.
I'd like to add something too, Commissioner, if I may. It's not that anybody is getting laid off. That position hasn't been filled. So it's not a case that we're going to change anybody's employment situation. I also want to say that, and I've told Tom this, I'm going to embarrass him in front of the commissioners and whoever else is listening in YouTube land. Maybe your mom is listening, Tom. I don't know, or watching, but Tom has been the department head since the Judge Spencer got appointed to the bench in, is that September?
Yes.
Probably was.
So Tom got hired. Tom was working for us for about 3 weeks, and then his boss got to be the judge. We talked, we recruited for the department head position, the public defender. Tom was the best candidate. I interviewed other candidates. He was the best candidate. And what I told Tom last week when we were talking about this before he got the staff report together, I said, not only do I think that he's a really good public defender, not only is doing a great job as the public defender, these are difficult times. Our entire court system is shifting from, on-site cases to a lot of Zoom cases. This epidemic and pandemic has affected everybody. It's changed how we're doing arraignments. So we're not necessarily going to the jail and doing arrangements. We're doing those virtually too. But the one thing that hasn't impressed me, certainly I knew that Tom was a great attorney because we vetted him very well beforehand. But I'm really very impressed with how easily he has adapted to being a department head and being somebody who is working well with their staff and leading his department and stepping up to the challenges. So I just want the commission to know we have a lot of really, really, really great department heads and elected officials working here. And Tom tonight just is representing those department heads, and he's doing a great job for us.
Any other discussion?
Chairman
Chris
Green.
Ringler.
Yeah, I don't know if Margaret wants to take this or Tom, you want to take this, but what are you hearing about the additional standards that they were talking about? Has that been pushed back or? I'll
take that. So
okay.
It's interesting, Commissioner, that there's not much movement. And as a member of the commission, that's kind of surprising me. There's not much movement on future standards. And that was before the pandemic. So I don't see that as moving very far over the next, certainly the next 6 months, given the situation that we're in now. But those standards haven't even been discussed hardly at any commission meetings.
Okay, and one follow-up question, then I'll leave it alone. It has to do with on the submitted form here. On the public indirect costs, there's a thing in there that's for attached Maximus report. Could you possibly send that to me if you get a chance? I'd like to look at that. See if
sure. So just to give the commission, to give the commissioners an idea, Maximus has been the contractor who has done our indirect cost rates and our cost allocation plans for, they were, I got here, after I got here, I negotiated them down on their price. So we've kept them. We are releasing an RFP. That RFP is out right now. So to go back out. There's a couple other companies in the state, a few other companies that do that. So for us, what we used last year, and if you remember, this was a big discussion that the controllers group and MAC worked really hard on, and frankly, as a commission member, it wasn't always pleasant, but I stood my ground. And that is that indirect cost rates are what are utilized across state and federal grants for things that are not obviously what you can directly charge. So Tom, obviously, his salary is all being charged to the grant. None of my salary is charged to the grant. None of our accounts payable people are charged to the grant. None of the payroll benefits people are charged to the grant. None of the janitors are charged to the grant. All those things make up an indirect cost rate. So for that $160-some thousand, that's a way for us to receive back from the commission what it costs us to have an indirect cost for the public defender's office. And I will send you the most recent plan, Commissioner Engler. It is last year, but I'm happy to send it to you.
Yeah. I got a lot of
Chairman
time.
Green.
Go ahead.
Sorry,
Chairman.
Additional discussion.
Chairman Green.
Commissioner Horton.
Quick question for Margaret. In the next Finance and Administration Committee meeting that we have, I'd like to get a breakdown as far as, let's go back if we can go back as far as 2016, and we're going to be comparing apples and oranges a little bit. Let's go back 5 years, 2015. In regards to the money that was spent on indigent defense per year. And then once the new standards took place, what county is actually spending versus what the state is reimbursing? And if there's an increase or decrease in the actual out-of-pocket, that's a bad term, the actual increase to the county, the defense goes.
I think that there's actually a large decrease to the county from what you used to spend, because
Okay, could we have that in committee meeting? I'd like to see the numbers on that, because one of my concerns is I'm looking at some of these things, and just to see as far as what I know there's increased standards. I know it's apples and oranges comparisons. I would just personally like to see as a commissioner what the actual increase, or as you say, decrease to the county has been. I think that would be a good thing to see and look at. I mean, and report.
So I will work to get that, Commissioner. I will tell you that my entire department is working remotely. And although we have access to our financial records, I can't guarantee I can have that prepared for you in some type of a fashion by the next finance committee. I will work hard to try to get that to happen.
If I said the next finance committee, I would not put when and if we have our next finance committee meeting. I don't think that would probably be a top priority.
Okay.
On the road, I think we do probably. I would just like to be. I'm just curious as far as what that would go to, but don't. Sure. Again, I would not make that a hot button item. There's going to be obviously, since the county's been down 10 weeks plus, there's going to be other issues and more than that. But again, I think that's something I would just like to see as a county commissioner. Sure. What exactly are, if anything, our costs have increased or decreased.
Absolutely. We'll pull that together.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Any other discussion? Hearing no further discussion, Madam Clerk, a roll call, please.
Commissioner Horton,
Yes.
Commissioner Marino,
Yes.
Commissioner Swaney,
Yes.
Commissioner Hope,
Yes.
Commissioner Engler,
Yes.
Commissioner Delzinski,
Yes.
Commissioner Green.
Yes.
Number of votes cast is 7, ayes received 7, nays received 0. Motion passed, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Tom, thank you very much for appearing tonight, and good luck over in the Midland deal.
Thank you. I'm gonna go get some stuff off the basement floor.
Okay.
Good luck, Tom.
Yeah, good luck.
Thank
Good
you.
luck.
Commissioner Jelizinski, do you want to close?
Yes, that does complete the work of the Criminal Justice and County Affairs Committee, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Good job. Item C, there's no Human Resource and Public Works Committee this evening. No Intergovernmental Affairs. Item D, no Administrator Controller issues. No unfinished business. It brings us down to new business. Item 8 is the Isabella County COVID-19 Preparedness and Response Plan discussion. Margaret McAvoy, our Administrator Controller.
Thank you. I know that you are all very well informed and paying attention to all of the executive orders and the other things that are happening across our state right now. The governor has initiated this My Safe Start program that kind of had a six stage to it. We are currently at level 3 across the state, the flattening the curve, hopefully. Now, this plan, before I dive into it, I just want to say a couple things about the plan. You know, the executive orders require us to have a plan. There are things in the executive orders that have to be addressed. Part of the executive orders refers to a CDC plan. We asked to have some recommendations from MMRMA. They put together a draft plan. We being the administrator controllers have all kind of chatted about, talked about, emailed about, whatever. This plan was put together originally when we started working on it. Nicole and I worked on it together. We were having Zoom meetings and phone calls and for very long periods of time for a number of days in the last, not last week, the week before. Nicole put the first draft together. She did a great job. And since that time, we have been working, Jessica and I, on moving the ball forward. Where we're at right now is that this is the plan that I would like to talk about today. I don't need to go through it all because I know that you have all read it. There are a few things and a few parts of it that I would like to discuss with you though, however, and tell you first of all, that I have met with all the department heads about the plan. I have met with the elected officials about the plan. You read in the paper that the courts have instituted their plan, which they were required to do, the Michigan Supreme Court. The chief judge and I and the court administrator have worked together closely on every step of this COVID response. In the end, they had a court order of the type of plan that they had to put together. And in their plan, as the chief judge's press release stated, was very clear of the phased system that they were needing to follow. So they are following that. They are opening up the courts. They are not opening up the building. We are not opening up the courts building. They are doing Zoom hearings at this point. Eventually, when they get to the point where they're doing hearings on site and people need to come in for whatever purposes, I'm sure that they will be doing that on a one person basis or however many people, and they will be moving forward with that. So the court has their own plan because they're required to do that by the Michigan Supreme Court. So looking at our plan moving forward and drafting something to go forward, I do want to say that it's ever evolving. The executive orders yesterday that extended the stay or changed the stay-at-home order and also added the expanded the workers' protection. That's something that's going to have to be updated later on this week in this plan. It's going to change as we go along. I mean, there isn't any doubt. So just a couple things that I don't want to read it all to you, but I want to talk about a few things I think it's very important. You know, we have had employees that have been working during all this. Obviously, the sheriff's office has been working full staff. Central dispatch has been working full staff. Emergency management has been working. I've been into the office a day or two a week. Other department heads have been in occasionally. Because the construction industry was opened up, we've opened up community development, put together a great plan. Tim Nieport put together a great plan, a mini plan for his office last week, which was a nice beta test for us. I think he's having 2 people in at a time, 2 people of his staff in. We're not letting visitors in the building, obviously. You know, his inspectors come in, they hand their tablet through the glass partition down there to a staff person with gloves on. That staff person who has gloves on is going and docking that, so that gets docked into the system and handing it back. Inspectors are not switching cars. The same inspector is driving the same vehicle all the time, so we can make sure there's not a transition of germs there and other things. We are not having like I said, we're not having the general public in the building, even though that is working. Mindy has a person on her staff at here, probably at least one person a day. Register of Deeds is having 1 or 2 people here a day. The treasurer has 1 or 2 people here a day. The prosecutor still has to prosecute. He's up there pretty much by himself as much as he can be. The whole point of the plan is to keep the COVID cases down. I'm very happy to say that, as to the best of my knowledge, as of this morning, we have not had one Isabella County employee test positive for COVID. We've had people tested. We've had people who have had symptoms. We've had people who have isolated themselves. We have people who have quarantined themselves. We have some employees who were exposed, who quarantined themselves and never developed any symptoms. So I'm very, very, very relieved and happy to know that that's the situation that we have with our employees. So moving forward, what we need to do as we move forward here is to make sure that we are providing what we need to provide for any person who's going to be providing in-service employees services here. If people are going to come back into our offices or into our buildings, we need to do it in a phased in, coordinated, organized fashions. We need to support as many people working remotely as possible. That is in all of the recommendations. It's in the executive orders. We need to make sure that any employee who does not feel well feels no pressure to come to work. We do not want them coming to work. We want them to remain home. So kind of looking at the business continuity, the plan will remain in effect until the plan changes, which could be any given day. There's going to be things that are going to change. So phase 1, you know, we are going to try to continue to slow the spread. The company offices, facilities will they will remain closed to the general public. Visitors that need to visit. So if somebody needs to come in for something to be serviced, we have a process and a procedure of how to do that. There will be no use of the county facilities by outside sources. So let me talk about that a little bit. If we have outside organizations meeting in our building until 9 o'clock at night, there's no way that our staff will be able to get that part of the facility sanitized in time for 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock the next morning. So I don't want to have our facilities used by outside sources during these 2 phases. We can reevaluate that later. All county departments are required to conduct minimum basic operations. So if they have to do that, and if they have to have employees here to do that, then some of the things that we are going to do, we're going to make sure that our employees are filling out this employee questionnaire. They will be fillable forms on our website. So an employee can go in and fill out the questionnaire and submit it to their department head or whoever their department head designates. Some elected officials may designate their chief deputy. Somebody might designate their office manager. Those can be electronically submitted. If we have employees who don't have access to the web, we will give them copies and they can take them with them and they can bring them in before they come to work. If they have no symptoms, then we're not going to have any issues, and we would like to have whoever we need to have come back under a very limited capacity at first in phase 1 to come in. Employees are going to be required to wear face coverings. If they come into the building, if they are in any public part of the building, if they're sitting close to somebody like Commissioner and Chairman Green and I are this evening. Today, before the meeting, the clerk came down and stood in the doorway and she had her mask on. If employees are going out into the common, if employees are in a private office, they can take their mask off, their face covering off. If somebody else comes into their workplace, they're going to have to put it on. If they leave their office, they're going to have to put it on. We have ordered floor decals for 6 feet distancing that we're going to put in all of our buildings. Some of the buildings might already have a few decals, most of us don't. So we're going to do the 6-foot distancing. I've put the facilities director in charge of deciding how many people can be in the elevator at a time and keep the 6-foot distancing. How many people can be in communal rooms, like the room outside the bathroom where the kitchen is on the hallway down here in this building. You know, if you need to use the restroom when you walk in and there's 2 people in that room, you're going to have to walk out and wait in the hall. Or go to one of the other bathrooms. That's just the way it's going to have to be. So as we're moving forward, those are going to be some major issues for us. Visitors are not going to, we're welcome to do whatever we can do to service people, If they're going to come into the facility during this phase 1 and phase 2, they are going to have to call to make an appointment. When that happens, whoever's office, let's pretend it's my office, and somebody's coming to meet with me, you know, myself or one of my staff will go meet them at the door. They're going to need to fill out the visitor questionnaires. Those 2 questionnaires or assessments are required of us. So they're going to need to fill those out. Mindy, can I use you as an example again?
Sure.
Okay. So I was talking this morning at the elected officials Zoom meeting about this, and I used Mindy's husband for an example. So let's say that we're in phase 2, Mindy's here, her husband wants to bring her lunch. Her husband's a visitor. He'll have to call her and say, honey, can I have an appointment? I'd like to bring you lunch. She'll say, yes, you can. What time are you coming? I'll meet you at the door. He's going to fill out the questionnaire. She's going to escort him. She's going to have lunch. She's going to escort them out. It isn't any different than if you're the person who's delivering the, if you're coming to take care of the coffee machine, same thing. We are not going to have the US mail delivery person come in at this point. We are picking up the mail every day now at the post office, and we're distributing the mail in our mail room ourselves. If the UPS person has a delivery, currently they're holding them at the UPS center and we're picking them all up. The issue is to try to provide the same quality as public service in a different format and yet preserve the environment here. So if somebody wants to come to the building and they are not able to wear a facial covering for some reason, or they can't get here, we will do whatever we can to provide them services. I will tell you, services are being provided every day here. The county clerk is issuing death certificates. She's issuing birth certificates. She's issuing marriage certificates. Bills are getting paid. People are doing business. It's astonishing to what innovation can do under trying circumstances. And I can't say enough about how cooperative everyone has been and what a big team effort it has been to try to keep the exposure down, help flatten the curve, keep the public served, but also keep our employees as healthy and safe as we can. So I don't want to go through every single form with you. I will tell you that the employee form, you know, new symptoms have been added over the last couple of weeks. I think that the vomiting diarrhea is something new in the last couple of weeks. I believe the sore throat is something new in the couple of weeks. What I am telling is department heads and elected officials, if an employee calls you in the morning and said, gosh, I just have a terrible headache, tell them to stay home. You know, if they call you and say, I have this little sore throat, tell them to stay home. That is the best thing we can do. For all of us who have people who are working remotely, whether that's ourselves or others, as much as people can continue to work remotely, we need to encourage that. It has gone remarkably well. I know that all the employees in my department are working at least full-time remotely. As we say, the bills get paid, the checks and people get their pay, the health insurance is working, bills get paid. Things are going, I think, remarkably well for where we are at. When you look at all of these posters and signs in the back, I will tell you, some of those were developed by Jessica of my staff. Many of them are from the CDC. We also, just so you know, also followed some of the guidelines through the Central Michigan District Health Department. So employees or visitors or anyone who used to have some symptoms had to wait 7 days. That changed last week to 10. That was a change of the plan. Looking at some of these, the new expanded worker protection program, you know, one of the things in there that maybe it was in another one, I just didn't see it before, is turn off all the water fountains, dismantle all the water fountains, and we will be doing that. I will say before the COVID situation hit, I was here one night and I was walking out and somebody came walking out of, I think, this room in a meeting and went down, and the water fountain on this floor has always kind of sprouted up about maybe an inch, and somebody was using that. And I said to them, there's a water cooler. Let me get you a glass of water. And I thought to myself, oh gosh, that's just kind of gross. But, you know, they were thirsty and they were trying to get a drink. So moving forward, we're going to turn off the water fountains and do some other things. The posters and the signage are all here. We sent that to Copy Corner because, again, almost everybody is working remotely. Copy Corner could take these and they could laminate them from us. Our laminator is one sheet at a time. That would have taken somebody months to get all of the signage ready to go. It's up here. It was waiting for me when I got here, so the facilities director and I will sort through that tomorrow, and they'll start hanging things up. So eventually, when you come back to the buildings, eventually, then we will be able to see all the signs, and we want to be responsive to the needs and the desires of providing the services, certainly to the public, and we will do what we can to do that. But we need to keep the exposure down.
Comments?
With that, I'm happy to answer questions.
Yeah, comments or discussion on Margaret's preparedness and response plan for the county?
Chairman Green,
Yes, Mr. Horton.
as Margaret will probably testify, her and I have probably spent some more time on the phone in the last than we've had in the last 5 years. But just a couple things. She touched on a couple issues, and the person that she said she was on the phone call with, to be honest, before the meeting was me. Just a couple things. It's most of the county, as all the county commissioners know, I'm a pharmacist by trade and have 3 pharmacies and have 40 plus employees. And for the last 10 weeks, it's been, I don't want to say a nightmare. That's not a good term, but it has been an interesting, eye-opening experience as far as what we have to do as a society and as a community. 2 words come to mind. One is safety, and the other one is expeditiously. And I think the county administrator controller Margaret McAvoy touched on the fact she is doing everything she can to make the county employees safe. And it's an ever-changing, I think it's a fluid environment, for lack of a better term. It's an ever-changing, ever-evolving, waiting for the next emails, waiting for the next executive orders to come through. You just don't know, especially if you're looking at executive orders, and that seems to be the mode of our state right now, is to see what's coming down on, for example, this week we just got yesterday, I believe, we've got regions, we got divided into regions, and region 6 and 8 got opened up, and region 2 did not. But that's beside the point for this discussion. Well, we have to do everything we can to save. One of the things I had talked is in how with phase 2 is what do we have a time frame with this? And look, we talked about 21 days and reevaluate after 21 days. I think that and whenever we open, we don't even know when we're going to officially quote unquote, sorry, I got a pen in my hand here, quote unquote open. But when we do open, as far as phase 2 goes, 21 days. And that was kind of thinking, well, that's, you look at 14 days, 2 to 14 days for, do get exposed and anybody coming in. And 21 days kind of makes, again, if you're going to err on the side of caution, err on the side of safety. The other thing too is 21 days is the county closed. The county, for lack of a better term, ceased operations. Pharmacies did not, grocery stores did not, certain other entities did not cease operations. It was an ongoing thing. So when you start up something that has been not operating, you could get a rush of services or rush for demand of services. So I think that's another reason why we want to be safe, and we want to be, however, we want to be expeditious in regards to getting this economy going and this county going. I'm going to touch more on probably when we get into board member discussion in the next segment. But as far as this county plan goes, I did discuss with the county administrator controller as far as facial coverings and refusal of someone who A, doesn't want to wear a facial covering come into the county building, or B, medically can't do it because of medical reasons. And I think she touched upon it earlier that we are not as a county going to do our best to make sure that every county resident is taken care of. I think there could be some access issues, but I think as a county, we have to identify those and work with those. There could be people who don't have access to a phone, can't make an appointment via the internet, can't make an appointment via the phone. I have patients that don't have cell phones and they do not have access to the internet. So what are they going to do? I think we had talked about putting signage on the front door, doing everything we can to make sure that our county residents' needs are taken care of, yet at the same time, maintain a safe environment. This is a whole new way of looking at life. And I never thought I'd say that, but and you hear the 2.0, I hate that term, but we're at ground zero. We're at restarting everything. And I looked to my left and my screen just went off on the other side here. You know, it's the new norm. And we have to identify that. Margaret, one quick thing, another quick thing, and I just because my screen came back on and I had it on there and I wanted to mention it before my screen goes down again on my left. On your Appendix B, again, this is a draft document, so that's why I'm bringing it up. And I do apologize because I try to correct everything so I don't hit you with any surprises or curveballs.
You're good.
On Appendix B, page 19 of 36, if you scroll down to, oh boy, in the past 14 days, have you had blah, blah, blah. If you answered yes to these above questions, or I think it should read, to keep consistent, if you answered yes to any of these above questions. I think that's the terminology, because you use that on page 19, on your Appendix B.
Yes.
On page, which in my screen says 19. Appendix
The
B,
employee health screening?
yes. In
Yes.
the past 14 days,
Mhm.
go down after the yes, no check boxes, the very first line goes, if you've answered yes to above questions to, I think it should read, if you've answered yes to any of these above questions.
Mine does read that.
No, mine does not.
Mine does.
Okay,
If you answered yes to any of the above symptoms on Appendix B,
okay. And my appendix, my copy of my draft does not say that.
Oh, there's two sections, a little
Okay.
bit lower, Margaret.
okay. Gotcha.
Appendix B. That's just my draft. Again,
Nope, I see the difference that Steve pointed out. Thank you, Steve.
yeah. That is just one thing. Again, we want to be careful when you want to, and again, this is just terms of art, but facial coverings and mask, we want to make sure we be consistent throughout. And that's hard to do even in my policies and procedures. I blend them. Facial coverings are different than what they consider to be masks. Just make sure we're consistent on that. But it's like, again, we want to do this expeditiously. We want to get the county forward. I think my biggest thing is there's a lot of residents in our county who have been working and want to have access to county facilities and want to have access. So I think doing what we're doing, we're trying to do everything we can. And if we're going to err, as I mentioned before, we're going to err on the side of safety. We're going to err on the side of, if we made a mistake, if we made a wrong policy, then it's in safety regards. It's an error on the safety side, not an error just because we don't care or we're just being sloppy. It is an error of being safe. But on the other hand, let's be expeditious. Let's try to get this county open. Let's try to get this county back to work, for lack of a better term, not just the essential county employees, but this county in general. Again, we are in a situation where if you look at some, and I'll get into this on the next phase of it, but as far as the county goes, this is a good plan. As Margaret said, as we talked about on the phone, we talked on Thursday or Friday, I think it was Thursday or Friday we had discussed, and on Monday, we got a new order coming through, which changed some stuff, didn't change a lot as far as this plan goes, but changed a lot of, is April 29th, or excuse me, May 29th going to be our opening day, which is Friday? Is that going to be the day we throw out, for lack of the proverbial, throw out the first pitch?
Actually, Friday, I guess a couple things. First of all, Commission to know that I did send an initial draft of this to Commissioner Horton, and he was extremely helpful. We did talk last Thursday and Friday. We had great conversations. It was very helpful because, as a healthcare provider, as a business person, as an employer, and as an attorney, I thought pretty well covered the spectrum of who should be maybe giving me some advice and counsel before we went much further. It was very, very helpful. So you currently have people in your buildings now who are working. So what I would like to do is that, you know, and you will note there's not a motion on the board to have this approved by the board as a policy because things are changing. Again, this particular plan now, as of yesterday, has to have some work done to it. It's going to have more work done, probably. You know, Governor Whitmer tends to do a press release, a press conference every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I would think there'll be something that needs to be tweaked tomorrow, probably something that needs to be tweaked Friday. Looking at this from other municipalities, you know, they're not having it. I think some counties have perhaps voted on it. I think other municipalities, at least I know in this area and some of the other municipalities and other counties are saying, note, the administrator controller is the chief executive officer and they need to be the one who are signing the plan. And, you know, that's who the COVID administrator is. So that's why there's not a motion on your agenda to on it. I think the action would probably be, you know, if 5 commissioners said, nope, Margaret, this is terrible, well, then I would have to go back to ground zero. But I will tell you, we have employees working now. And so if this after the end of discussion today, we're like, oh yeah, this is good, let's go with it and see how it works and we'll readdress it. Then, you know, we're kind of in pre-phase 1 at this point. I don't know what's going to happen on the 28th. None of us know what's going to happen on the 28th. I know that the regions, and Commissioner Horton, the regions were identified, I think, last week or maybe the week
Right, before that.
and the regions are kind of centered around traffic patterns and where people go to work or whatever. I know there's been some discussion locally about why are we in with Grand Rapids? Why aren't we in with other areas more in the middle of the mitten? I don't have the answer to that. But I know that as we look at moving forward here, you know, when we're looking at, you know, from here up, supposedly kind of, we'll use the term got opened up. I don't think everything got opened up from the UP and Traverse City area north. But obviously there is a plan as we institute how this is going to be re-engineered from Lansing. And I think that Commissioner Horton is absolutely right that, you know, we need to have a plan. The plan needs to be something that we need to publish on our website. We need to provide it to our employees. We need to provide it to anybody else who wants it. We will certainly do that. But I would like to be able to move on with the plan so that we are at least concurring and can move forward with employees who are currently here now, knowing what they have to do. Although I can tell you, walking up and down the halls of the building, you know, people are wearing their face coverings, people are keeping their social distance, but there's not very many people here at this point. So, and I have a couple other things to talk about under the other discussion too, about some other reopening issues as we're moving forward and some other things we're doing in other sites.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention too, we had talked about facial coverings. And that's where I really wanted to get involved with you in regards to what happens when someone does not want to wear one. We are seeing that not only in our business, but in other businesses where people just say, I'm not wearing one, and they want to come in. So I think as we go forward, that's something you're going to have to be aware of. The county is going to handle that. And I guess my bottom line with everything is getting back safe and expeditiously. We want to be safe. We want to make sure every county resident has access to the county, regardless if it's in the county building, if it's in regards to animal control, it's regard to parks, it's regard to recycling, whatever. They need to have access to the county, and prefacing that with safety. And that is where we go forward. As you're right, it is an ever-changing thing. I can give you, I'm going to quit talking here in a second because I'm getting thirsty. But several weeks ago, I came in on a Monday morning and had to spend pretty much all day drafting new policy because of executive orders or changes that was done. And you're going to see that. You're going to see it's in the county commissioners. I'm just letting you know that's what you're going to see. So if you hear from constituents, why is the county doing this? Why is the county doing that? It's an ever-changing thing. Be aware of that. And again, I'm never going to fault anyone who does anything and errors if they do err, which I'm not saying that's happened. But if we're going to do anything wrong, let's do it on the side of safety. So that's all I've got to say on that. So we'll get to more on the next topic.
Any other comments? Any other comments or discussion? Okay, we'll move on to the next item, and that's the Corona-19 discussion. Commissioner Horton, you're up.
Oh, okay. I
You
didn't
get to
make
talk
this,
again.
make this my topic for agenda, but I thank you for getting it on. Just is again, piggybacking on what I just said several seconds ago in regards to safety and expeditiously. Hey, I would like to see our committee meetings start getting scheduled. I don't know if that's possible. If we can Zoom, if we can do whatever, I think we need to be involved in committee meetings. Two, and there's no order of importance, and there's no particular order. They're all important as far as I'm concerned. Our recycling center. I think we need to be more transparent. If that's probably not the best politically correct term, I think we need to be more transparent as far as what we're doing with recycling. The city came out and hired out Republic to come in and swoop through and pick up a bunch of recycling. We have, as of, again, getting back to the side of caution, back in March, we decided that the recycling center wasn't going to be doing recycling anymore for a while. In my profession, we have certain guidelines and rules we have to follow as far as quarantining of plastics, papers, et cetera. And as we go forward, opening up the recycling center, I think we need to take a look at that, what other places are doing. I think that's a good thing for the Human Resources and Public Works Committee to look at. Again, I'm not giving any advice. I just think I think it's a good topic for them to do. I don't have answers for that. I think as far as this county commissioner goes, that's probably been the #1 topic that my constituents have talked to me about in regards to the county, as far as the county being down. And that is recycling. I go in my garage and I see piles and piles and piles of stuff. We want to do what's right. We want to do what's good for our community. And that's what it's about. Nobody in this community wants to do anything wrong. We want to do what's right. So we need to have, I'm sure we got a plan. I'm sure we're working on it. I just don't know how to answer that question to them other than to say that we're going to do it safe, but we're going to do it expeditiously. So those are the two words I keep coming back to all the time.
So can I address recycling?
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm just going through stuff and
Sure, let me address recycling while you're on it. So recycling, the MRF is a department of the county, as we all know, just like everybody else is a department of the county. So we're going to be opening them up casually, in phase. I don't want to say casually, in phases, the same way as everything else. So when we're ready to start opening up, I am meeting now with everyone, as I said earlier, every one of my department heads. And every one of them is preparing and providing me with their individual plan that will fit into this other plan. So what we're doing at recycling, just so you know at this point, I don't want to open recycling. I mean, if the Board of Commissioners, if 4 Board of Commissioners voted and said open recycling tomorrow, Margaret, then I guess I would do that because I work for you. But I don't want to start that any longer or any sooner than we're starting other things. I will tell you that we have spent a lot of time on what's the right thing to do with the recycling center as we move forward. And I do have a 2-page and a half draft plan for reopening the MRF from the MRF director that he has worked on, that he and I are going to be working on. Mine, as you can see, has little red ink all over it because I have questions and comments and things I want to talk about. But we're putting in some plexiglass in between where our processors will stand, because it's pretty hard to have any type of social distancing there. But if we put barriers up, that's going to make hopefully people safer once we finally get there. You know, looking at what we're going to do as far as not congregating, because there's a very small room there that all those employees have lunch in. That's not going to happen anymore. That's not going to be able to work. Looking at what we're going to do with our truck drivers, how we're going to keep the trucks safe, how we're going to keep the trucks sanitary, how we're going to try to keep our employees separate. I want you all to know we are working on a plan for each of our departments. Some of them are much less, they're a much lower risk. If you look at the the hierarchy of risk for the COVID and you look at the exposure, the MRF employees probably are the highest risk once you get away from law enforcement and corrections. So we are working on the plan to open the MRF. We're probably looking at doing that the same time we open up after the 28th. We can revisit that if we need to, but I do want you to know that that is something we're working on. And as far as the city deciding to pick up, that was a wonderful thing they did. The city manager and I have talked throughout this whole process, which is part of she and I and Mark talking and having our Zoom meetings, but both of us and each of us individually talking with the other one as we need. That was discussions that she and I had over a period of time of what would be the best thing to do. The city came forward and said, we're just going to have Republic come in and do a pickup. That will help all the way around. It will take care of the constituents and the issues of the residents of having the product piling up in their homes. It will also help us when we reopen so that we don't have a big backlog, and we don't want to have a big backlog, and we don't want stuff blowing around. And I know that, I think Commissioner Jałoszewski has talked about that a couple of times, and that is part of our plan as we move forward. So just like Central Dispatch is going to have their own unique part of the plan, so is MRF, so is Commission on Aging, so is my office, so is Mindy's office eventually. Everything's going to be a little specialized, I guess. But we are looking at how to reopen the MRF, and other people are doing it other places. I don't know, Commissioner Horton, a lot of those other places are much bigger than we are. They have look, comparing us to Emmett County just doesn't make sense. Comparing us to Kent County doesn't make sense. I think that Jake and the team and myself and others are pretty capable of putting that plan together.
Well, I 100% agree with everything you said. I just think that, maybe we need to have some more reporting on it. I think you just did a great explanation where we're at with the county. But I think we just need to have that maybe more out front.
Sure. I don't have it all figured out yet, sir, but
no, again, I don't know if there is a correct answer, if there's a right or wrong or yes or no or 100%. I know other places are doing it. I spoke to you on the phone. I don't know, what are they doing with PPE for their employees? What are they doing with quarantining of certain products? Because it's a whole new world. Who would think you'd have to, it's recommendation that you have 3 days quarantine on plastics.
Right.
Who's going to do the quarantine? Is it going to be the consumer? Is it going to be the county? Is it going to?
Well, it kind of goes back to, you can't take your cans and bottles back to Myers, but you're going to bring them to the MRF. That concerns me.
And don't even get me started on paying 10 cents and I can't return anything. We won't go into that tonight.
Has his hand up.
I'm trying to get Horton. Commissioner.
Yeah, talk about the MRF. One of the problems you're going to find out is with that facility, there's not a lot of storage in there. So if the supply line down and the other plants that are taking the recyclables aren't taking it, that facility is going to fill up pretty soon. And then, if they don't have any place to truck it out, like you said, you can't store it outside. So you're going to have to kind of plan ahead and try to figure out who's going to be taking it. And there's going to be quite a backlog, and because everybody's going to be open up at the same time. So.
And I agree with what you're, Commissioner Engler, I totally 100% agree with what you just said. I just think we need to get that out there as a talking point or a speaking point to where people know that.
Commissioner Marino.
Yeah, well, I think what we're seeing here is a real good example of people not realizing, the stuff piling up in your house was unhealthy to you, but the stuff going to those people that work here is unhealthy to them. And so most people don't really realize the process. I've been out there before. I've been in those little rooms and I see what's happening, but it's just one example of a lot of things that's going on right now where people don't realize that some people do their stuff for them and are risking themselves. And so they're real impatient, but they don't realize it's a luxury and it could be a danger to people for them to feel better about recycling when it's not that simple, So, and it's not just in recycling, it's in grocery stores, it's in airports, it's in all kinds of places where the people that are the most endangered are the people that are invisible, that don't have power, that are considered disposable and expendable. But that's what we have to really do is educate people to know that we can't be like that. I mean, this is what all these glaring things that are unfair, dangerous, and unequal are being highlighted right now. And I'm sure that things are not going to stay the same anymore, but they've been bad for a long time. So we just have to make people understand that we can't just on one end have somebody really privileged and just throwing everything away, or I mean, putting it in, and some of the stuff isn't going to be recycled anyway. But all I'm saying is there's a lot of stuff like that, and people have to learn how to be more patient and considerate of everybody in the whole society, not just themselves.
Yeah, Commissioner Marin, I think you made a good point too in regards to that. Even before all this happened, we had to contract out and with manpower some of those positions because no one wanted to do it. Can you imagine now with this, with what's going on, trying to get that? So yeah, it's, again, I think my biggest statement on that, let's just get it out there to the county, what we're doing, and that we're not just, not taking everything for granted. Another, again, real quick, again, one other comment, a couple other things. The parks, I think we briefly discussed what we're going to do. That's another issue that we've seen as far as county commissioners go. At least I've gotten some notifications from constituents and others in regards to what are we going to do as, again, we can't do anything because till the executive order clears, but what's our time frame with parks? Are we going to, Commissioner Jelazinski is my guru on this. So I'm looking, he's right to my right in my screen. But I think we need to be upfront again. Where are we going to go with it? I think there was something on the website. We're going to, whenever it becomes we can open, we're going to try to look at 3 weeks later. But I think I'm just paraphrasing that statement. Again, I've lived this for 10 weeks. So when I ask these questions, because we've never stopped. My business never stopped. The county did. So what are we going to do to get going?
No, Commissioner Horton, the county did not stop.
Well, parks aren't open. Some of them aren't open, so they did stop.
So let me just address that. I don't know of a department head or an elected official who's not working full-time remotely. So the Parks Department, the Parks Director is working full-time. 2 of her staff are working. I think the website says, and you called me on that last week, Commissioner, which was great. And that's been updated. We're looking at opening the parks, I believe, June 26th. The DNR is not looking at opening, camping June 26th. The DNR is not looking at opening camping before June 22nd. So for us, whenever the executive order gets changed, there's still a number of things that have to happen before we can open up the campgrounds. Water testing and all sorts of other things. I talked with the Parks Director today as a fact when I was driving up today, and we were talking about, what kind of camping, if we're going to have camping, will we have? Should we have just self-contained, which I know that we've talked with a couple folks about. And we got talking about the license that we have. And, I suggested that she contact the health department and talk to them about, you have to have the bathrooms open. Do you have to have the showers open? Well, how do you manage that? And how don't you manage that? And as you talked to Commissioner Horton about, there are so many moving parts. I just don't want the public listening or the commissioners here to think that the entire county is shut down and nothing is happening.
No,
there are a lot of people working.
And if you thought, and if that was what I came across as saying, that was not the case at all. No, I think what we need to do is we need to let the community know, because that's what it is. It's a community. And we need to let the community know what we're doing. And maybe I'm not relaying enough to my constituents or other members of the community, but I just think we need to, as we go forward, getting back to those 2 words again, being safe and be expeditious when we reopen, because we have to, we simply have to do this. We have to get open. We have to start doing stuff and get back to what I guess a new normal will be. But again, that's just my impression of everything. being on.
I'm sure we can do better with communication. I will try to do better with communication. The parks information is on the website of opening up the campgrounds on the 26th. I know that's on the website. I talked to Sue Ann today about it to make sure it was. Now, if somebody looks that up while we're talking about it and it's not there, I'll have egg on my face, but talked about it today. I advised her to contact the health department about any type of licensure that we have or that we would need to maybe address, what are we going to do with, what kind of camping are we going to have if we have camping? Obviously, we want to have camping. Our parks are so popular. People love coming there. I will tell you all the cancellations we have. We've contacted every single person. I believe Sue Ann has contacted pretty much every single person personally, talked to them. We're issuing refunds for this month. I know it's a big disappointment to people that we're not having camping over Memorial Day, but neither is the state.
Can't do her.
So, as we're moving forward, can we do a better job? I don't have any doubt we can do a better job, but I don't want to leave the impression that there's not a great deal of going on and a lot of people working hard to try to keep things moving. So as we roll things out, I think getting information out in a different way might be a very good idea, Commissioner Horton.
Yeah, I'm not looking at anything retrospective at all, Margaret. I think we need to, as a board, we need to be prospective. As a final comment, and probably can wait. I'm just very thankful, and I don't know if this is even going to be a statement or not. Hopefully I'm not proven wrong. As I called Chairman Green yesterday driving somewhere, and I was going, George, I'm looking around me and to my right and to my left, I see nothing but water. So, we got all this other stuff going on, and we could have flooding in our county. And Mr. Hausman even mentioned it. What's being seen in Midland, that doesn't even seem to be a concern. And that in prior days, that would probably dominate the entire conversation of what we had tonight. And
I can tell you that certainly was a concern yesterday and Sunday for a number of us. It certainly was a concern. And, emergency management and first responders were doing a great job assessing that and monitoring that. And I certainly had multiple conversations with the emergency manager about that. As a matter of fact, as late as soon before this meeting started today, he had texted me about a couple of dams that had failed, and I texted him back and said, that is Midland County, right? And I knew it was, but I wanted to be confirmed. I know that talking with the sheriff today, I believe in our Zoom meeting, he commented that he was, corresponding and working with the Midland County Sheriff and offering any resources that we had to support them. So that we are very fortunate. Yesterday, I know was a scary time and we weren't quite sure which way we were going to go, but we were, as you said, you are very right. We are very fortunate to have avoided a flood.
Well, and hopefully all the waters that's currently in the fields aren't going to make their way into our rivers and floods, and everything we do experience will be minimal compared to what happened several years ago. So again, I'm sorry to the other commissioners if I've hoarded some time here, but I'm done speaking for right now. So I'm going to drink a couple drinks of water here and let them speak and whatever. So thank you everyone for that.
Any other discussion? Commissioner Jalowski.
Just some background. I've been doing some work for Clinton County, some grant writing, and so I still have access to an email account. And I see that the administration's doing in Clinton County, it's a report every week to the Board of Commissioners. Apparently the administration there gets bullet points from all the county elected officials and department heads and compiles a 3 or 4 page weekly report that brings all this information forward. And I think that might help communications. What I will do, you can take it or reject it, but I will send everyone a copy of the last report. You can take a look at it and see if it has value to our situation in terms of improving communications. Maybe it's something to be shared with the newspaper too. They seem to be doing a good job of covering county matters.
Any other discussion? We will move on then. Next item is just a comment. Michelle, is anybody muted?
No, there isn't, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Moving on, then, next now is announcements. Any announcements? Jim, Reno.
Yeah, I just wanted to let the commissioners know that I was quite busy on Monday. There was a Northern Michigan Counties Association meeting. There was a US rep, the guy from the UP, and there was several state reps and state senators. We had questions, we had an update on what's going on in Lansing. And we had two really good presentations about the lake levels, the Great Lake levels, and also Gaylord Weather Bureau. It was quite informative, and it was Zoom, and it was also recorded. And we also had a very good MAC Health and Human Services meeting later that day. Now, I sure couldn't have been up in Grayling and then been in Lansing when one was over, but it's funny because there was some commissioners that were at both meetings, you know. And so, but there is a lot of stuff going on about the lack of the money coming to the states and the counties. And we did discuss that. We did discuss that with a representative of the US rep, who voted against it. And, you know, it's real frustrating because it doesn't seem like there's much urgency now in Washington, DC to get help. I mean, we didn't get it yet to the states and counties, you know, local governments, cities, villages, and townships. And that's really crucial right now because we did find out about the $7 billion shortfall that's going to be in the next two budgets of the state, you know, and as you know, states have to balance their budget. They can't do they can't print the money and all that stuff. So I encourage all the commissioners and all the people, you know, to make sure that people in Washington know that we have to have this. We have to have this. They can't just, well, we're going to take a long break now because nothing's urgent. Things are really urgent in a lot of different ways. And so that's what we talked about. And I just want to say to the other commissioners also that it's very easy to go to these committee meetings and conferences and all that these days, really easy. And it's really comforting to talk to your colleagues in other counties and in Lansing, you know, about different ways people do things. And like Margaret said, it's not the same in every county, but some things are quite basic, and it's comforting to brainstorm with other commissioners from the state. Thank you.
Any other announcements? Commissioner Jalczynski.
I'd like to direct a question to Commissioner Engler. Commissioner Engler, you mentioned last meeting about the hazardous waste collection. Is that still on? And I didn't record the date and I forgot to.
Yeah, it's past, it happened already, so we'll have the number. We haven't got the numbers from the state yet, but as soon as I get the numbers on the amount of materials collected, I'll pass that on.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other announcements?
Chairman Green,
Commissioner Harton.
real quick, on the pharmacy side of everything, those folks in the community, just to let everyone know, apparently there are several insurance companies, PBMs, that have come out. If you've lost your insurance or no longer have prescription coverage, PBMs out there that have made programs, and I've got people under a program that you can receive some certain prescription drugs to make yourself aware if you do not have any prescription coverage because of this COVID crisis or anything, if you've lost your job, especially if it's a brand name medication, check with your pharmacy to see if there's any coupons or anything like that available for your medications, especially if they're on a brand name basis or if they're a higher end, like a specialty drug, because there's a lot of products out there. And I don't want to see anybody in this community be harmed by this. I mean, that's, again, as we go forward in the pharmacy world, testing is going to be one thing that pharmacists are going to be on the forefront of. And last but not least, as we go forward, hopefully one day we're going to be vaccinating people in regards to this. And pharmacists and pharmacies are able to do that. So again, I think there at one time was 14 pharmacies in this town. I think we're down to 11. I haven't counted on my hands recently or my toes in regards to this, but don't be afraid to reach out, talk to your pharmacist, talk to them and ask them questions, because as you read on the national news and hear on the national news, they're the front lines. They're one of the frontline people, and they are probably one of the most easily reached professions there is. So reach out to your pharmacist, reach out to your pharmacy, and just to piggyback in my last statement, is facial coverings. Please, 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 people in this community, when you go out, put a facial covering on. Don't think that you, as a man, myself, don't think you're too macho to wear one. Don't think, you know, if you have a medical reason, that's fine. I completely understand, or you can't wear one. But we're a community, and let's protect our community. Let's be safe, and let's get through this. And that is Margaret. I think I've shared with Administrator McAvoy, that is probably going to be one of her biggest issues, is people who do not want to put on a facial covering. And that should not even be an issue. You would think that would not even be an issue, but it is. And I think people in this community needs to realize, you know what? We're doing it for, you may not want to wear one, but do it for the other person. Thank you.
Any other announcements? Motion adjourned.
Motion to adjourn.
Second, Joe Lozinski.
Is that Horton?
Yes.
Second, Joe Lozinski.
Is there support for it?
Jerry.
Huh?
Jerry Jelzinski.
Okay.
Commissioner Jelzinski.
We're adjourned.
Whoa.
Take care, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Take care of yourself.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So you're gonna want to go to the lead meeting. Did you go to?